Good evening, everyone. My name is Ivone Margulies, and I'm a Chantal Akerman scholar. I wish I could be there with you to introduce Meetings with Anna, but it wasn't possible. I'll be introducing the film, a turning point in Akerman's career, from New York, hence all the siren noises you can hear. I want to start by saying that Meetings with Anna is quite ambitious and deceptively simple. The film presents Akerman's aesthetic trademark. The framing composition is symmetrical, the narrative is linear, and structured through a series of encounters between the protagonist and 5 other people as she travels from Paris to Essen in Germany and back. Each encounter involves one or more long conversations with Anna, who mostly listens quietly and empathetically. However, the film introduces a number of aspects that become more and more central in her oeuvre. Even though Akerman had appeared in her first short film as well as in Je tu Hillel, and her voice reading her mother's letters structure her 1976 film News from Home, Meetings with Anna is the first film to have as its protagonist a character with so many of Akerman's own biographical traits. The protagonist is called Anna, Akerman's middle name. She is an independent filmmaker traveling through Europe showing her work. She is also Jewish, although we infer this in the film indirectly through brief dialogue references. She says she can understand some German, probably because of knowing some Yiddish. Daniel makes a reference to the promised land of milk and honey. Anna's mother's friend, Ida, returned to Cologne after the war. In the film, this autobiographical dimension appears in oblique ways, and I believe this aesthetic indirection deserves notice. For instance, when Akerman first had the idea for the film, it was supposed to be primarily about Anna and her mother's encounter. Anna then mentioned that she was paralyzed by the prospect of making the film centered on Anna's revelation that she was gay, and that she was only able to complete the script when she created a narrative that included the mother's scene as the third encounter in a series of 5. For me, this is a telling example of how Akerman uses her minimalist aesthetics to create a different register for autobiography. She displaces her mother's centrality by equating it to the meeting with others in the film, and yet at the same time, this is the sole encounter where Anna talks more than she listens. When the film came out in 1978, it was generally labeled a European art film, and given Akerman's trajectory as an avant-garde narrative filmmaker, it was seen as something of an aesthetic compromise. The film was compared to other 70s existentially road movies such as Wim Wenders' Kings of the Road and Alice in the Cities. Akerman rejected such comparisons, saying her film had none of the romantic aspects of Wenders' Wanderings. Instead of searching for a home, her protagonist is always in transit and continually resisting demands to take roots or get married. Using Deleuze and Guattari's writings on Kafka as her reference, she mentioned that Anna was a mutant, and the character's nomadism and celibacy freed her to move away from the usual system of possession, from conservative values. Akerman also associates this nomadism with her Jewishness. The film about a trans-European traveler with an international cast, Roch Lehmann, Lea Massari, and Hans Zickler, is not only about contemporary 70s Europe, but it is Akerman's most Jewish film at the time of its release. The path mapped by Anna is part of a longer trajectory of dislocation and migration from Eastern Europe to the US. Before and after Meetings with Anna, other Akerman films such as News from Home, From the East, Dest, and American Stories, History, Philosophy, and Food have insisted on the history beneath this migrant geography, with a specific significance in Ashkenazi Jewish history of movements from east to west. Akerman had great ambitions for this film. She said that Anna's constant movement from city to city was meant to trigger larger cultural and historical resonance. She says in a press release, and I quote, "Behind the insignificant events that Anna will be told about, we shall see the shape of great collective events, the history of countries, the history of Europe, and its last 50 years. Notice, for instance, how the film's extended dialogues list intimate revelations and sweeping historical statements. Akerman weaves personal and historical matters precisely to her characters' words and concerns. Her indirect approach to history, her desire to have it function as a life undercurrent in the film's present, so evident in her later documentaries, starts with this film. In meetings with Anna, we see already in an oblique manner her strange relation to Germany and Eastern Europe. The film articulates the mix of curiosity and defamiliarization for Germany in all of its intricate post-Holocaust reverberations. When scouting for location for the film, Akerman stated, for instance, that the food, the language were familiar to her, but that she felt towards Germany a sort of rejection. The scenes around food are quite explicit in this regard. When watching the film, it's important to pay attention to the content, but also the tone of the speeches directed at Anna. Each encounter triggers a melange of European malaise and personal complaints. The juxtaposition of personal and historical registers is unnatural, and the dialogues have a clumsy quality as they force major issues onto intimate revelations. The compressed historical references generate a peculiarly loaded text. This awkwardness is purposeful and part of Akerman's anti-naturalism, but these extended monologues share an affect and tone that only becomes clear, in my view, cumulatively. Heinrich's abridged history of Germany better than any exemplifies Akerman's attempt to equate personal and historical matters. His speech moves from an intimate revelation of his private life to history, intercut by a refrain as he lists all the events, and he says, and then, his speech releases not meaning but the emotional tone of a bedside story. Except for Anna, everyone in the film says something someone already knows. They say platitudes or they repeat again and again, repeating even the word again. This repetitious quality immediately raises the question of what is actually exchanged in these dialogues. This sort of exchange yields an interesting paradox. While each encounter involves a plausible and individual version of personal experiences and historical vision, it is their common mood and plaintive monotone that finally matters. Akerman has stated that what interested her in the dialogue performance is that it rounded up with a rhythm, a psalmody where the meaning of phrases doesn't make sense. And indeed, the dialogues in the film involve a sense of wariness that Akerman associates with Jewishness and Jewish religion in particular. She said she used to go to the synagogue with her grandfather and to Jewish school, and everywhere there was the same rhythm of litany and prayer chant. Consisting mostly of plaintive demands and repetitive refrains, the monologues directed at Anna acquire an echo quality as if they are repeated from the past. The historical dimension, personal and collective, telegraphed in what Heinrich, Ida, the train passenger, and Daniel say, creates in its reduced content a pervasive sense of weariness, a void that perfectly complements Anna's own stillness as she listens to them. And yet talk and the listener are different, and this character's despair is a foil to Anna's autonomy and self-containment as she finally passes on. Her attentive but separate listening enacted Akerman's own relationship to two charged, interrelated dimensions of her personal life, her closeness to her mother and the lingering effects of a European Jewish history expressed by her mother's silence and refusal to mention what happened in the concentration camp where her mother's parents perished. Meetings with Anna stages a minimalist Jewish history through a contrast between a nomadic character who preserves her voice and autonomy and moves on, and those who plaintively channel the weight of history, the echo, voicing demands that she stay. Nothing speaks better this difference between Anna and the others than her singing scene at the end. For whenever a woman sings in Akerman's work, she does so out of tune, but with immense singularity. I hope you enjoy this magnificent film as you follow Aurore Clément in one of her greatest performances as Anna. Thank you.